Do I agree with the Health Select Committee recommendations? No, I have to say I don't agree with quite a few of them. The first thing I don't agree with is changing the name, GP commissioning. Why? GP commissioning doesn't mean that no one else is involved in it, but it does mean that the prime role is handed to general practices, working with each other, taking on a population perspective as well as the individual patient perspective that we've done traditionally in general practice. Now, the big game there is going to be to involve every GP and every practice, and that has to be the first thing to do. And then, of course, we involve specialists, we involve nurses, we involve local people, and we co-lead. But unless we get GPs on side, it won't work. And frankly, we've been out to play 3 times already with primary care groups, with practice-based commissioning, with locality commissioning and fund holding. We really need to keep the GP name there at the moment, otherwise general practice will walk.
You're undertaking your own listening process. What are the concerns of your members about the current reform process?
Well, the concerns from the consortia themselves is that they'll be dumbed down, that they'll be made into the sort of porridge that we've seen in the past of NHS reform, and that things won't be changed around them. So we need to keep that very sharp bit about GP commissioning, which is a few people, particularly the clinicians in general practice, being emancipated to make the changes that I see are necessary each day when I see patients in surgery, and loosening up the system and bringing more and more services into the community, because as we know, in this country we use hospitals more than anyone else apart from America, and we haven't yet allowed the primary care NHS to happen.
You've been speaking to conference about potential conflicts of interest. Do you see those as being a great problem?
Potentially they are, particularly in the public and media mind. I see them not as being a problem if we have certain provisos. One for me is transparency. If it's clear that I want to provide a service in my practice that currently is provided less conveniently and more expensively elsewhere, if I do that and if I'm prepared to publish the accounts, people know exactly how much I'm making, or if I'm a social enterprise, or if I'm a community interest company, they know I'm not making anything and that this is for the public good. There are many ways around that. I don't think there are many GPs who are in this simply to make money. I really don't. And certainly in commissioning, there isn't any money. If you look at the average commissioner, they're doing it because they believe in it passionately, and they're doing it often in their free time and carrying on being a GP at other times. So yes, we have to manage conflicts of interest, but as I've said today, let's not have 2 standards. Only last week, the Competition and Cooperation Panel allowed a foundation trust to start employing GPs, GP practices. Well, let's not bellyache too much then about primary care having some conflicts of interest, provided they're all known and they're all open, because the bigger danger than conflict of interest is nothing happening, and that's what we've seen for the last 15 years.
Stephen Doyle talked about commissioning for solutions, not for every individual transaction. Is that something that you think that primary care will welcome? Absolutely,
because primary care is horizontal, it's not linear. When a patient comes in with 10 different problems, that's about trying to solve what they come in with. I can't start transacting each particular disease, problem or part of the body. Primary care is that. So we do need to look at a far more global sense. Most of my over 65s have 2 or 3 long-term diseases. You can't just look at the diabetes or the heart disease or the mental health problem. They're all connected. So yes, you have to look at general solutions.
So should we press ahead with the reforms?
Absolutely. We must make sure that GP commissioning happens after having wandered in this direction now for the last 18 years. There are issues about market, and I understand colleagues who feel that we must not become, if you like, the victims of market ideology in terms of the market coming before patients. I do understand that. And the easy way around that is to make the GP commissioner sovereign. They can decide how much market's required, when they use any willing provider, when they tender, when they choose a provider that they own locally that's tried and tested. If that's the way the market moves, then it will work. If the market is something that, for instance, Monitor can impose upon GP consortia, shackle them, straitjacket them, not allow local clinicians to be in the driving seat, then it won't work. So my overall answer is yes, believe fervently in the reforms. There's a little fine-tuning that needs to be done.
And yet there have been polls recently that have shown that a third of GPs intend to leave the NHS in the next 5 years. And then we have letters to the Telegraph, for instance, saying, please, we're all in favour, let's go ahead with it. Can we conclude that GP land is completely split?
There are differences of opinion, but frankly, there are differences in information. I mean, I spoke to an audience on Tuesday and asked how many were in favour of the reforms, and about 5 or 10 out of 100 put their hands up. At the end, I don't know if they're just flattering me, about 50 or 60% did. I don't think people quite understand what this is about. There's been so much misinformation, and also they don't quite know what they're putting their heads in the noose of. Everyone's prepared to take accountability, everyone's prepared to take responsibility, but they must be given a degree of, dare I say it, power, a degree of being able to change things. I don't mind accepting some restrictions if it's going to be better for patients. What I don't want to be is at the bottom end of some chain receiving someone else's orders to do their bidding, and then they say, but Michael, you're empowered. And I think that's the real fear. The real fear is centralism will rear its ugly head, that managerialism, line hierarchies, will rear its ugly head. And what we need after this listening exercise is a clear message that we mean localism, we mean clinical leadership, and if those messages are loud and clear, most of general practice will fall in behind it.
Dr. Mike Dixon, thank you very much.